After Krysten Peek let us know a little bit about the draft, we then had her on, Wesson Walker, to talk more about Con VJ Edgecombe. Are the Hornets really interested in Casper Yakubonis? We'll give you another mock draft, and then we'll comb through the Sicko satchel. That's all today. Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcasts, and that does include YouTube. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Always appreciate FanDuel. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also Locked On NBA with Hayes and Matt Moore. We also talked about Matt Moore and his Substack yesterday. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. You could also listen to Doug on WFNZ, not from 12 to 3, but he just joined the Mac and Bone show. Mac and Bone, man, thanks for showing LOH some love, really. I was on there yesterday. You were on there. You got more airtime, by the way. You're still in my airtime. You're stomping all over it over here.
Did you count it up?
I did.
Did you see if... Oh, that's
by the second, buddy. By the second. And you got way more time. So anyways, go check that out too, WFNZ.com. Just search Mac and Bone and you'll be able to find Doug's hit with those guys. Okay, WFNZ party as well. We also had Krysten Peek on Wesson Walker. This was after she dropped an article, I guess 2 days ago now, about some of the things that she was hearing surrounding the NBA draft. And she talked about the Hornets' possible interest in Con. She talked about a couple of things here, Doug. I got 2 sound bites for the people that I brought today. I got 2 of them. First, let's go to something that she did write about in her article. The Hornets' possible interest in Casper Yakubonis. Okay? Maybe we should get used to saying it. I'm not sure. Casper Yakubonis. And how the Hornets are being abnormally quiet about this one individual prospect and how that's leading to some speculation. Here's Krysten Peek talking about it. Could be one of these stars that we've been talking about a lot, or it could be Yakubonis there at 4.
The fact that I have heard crickets about Casper Yakubonis, the 6'7" guard out of Illinois, just made me speculate, okay, is this another player? Is this another shock player that the Charlotte Hornets could be just quietly targeting? And I think Con, I don't think it's just, oh, we're going to take VJ Edgecombe, we're going to take Ace Bailey, or we're going to take Trey Johnson. I honestly think Jeff Peterson and the rest of his staff are really looking at other players within that top 10 range and saying, no, how does he fit our culture? How does he fit our locker room? Look at the core people that we already have with LaMelo, with Brandon. How does he fit and complement that? And they're more approaching it that way instead of, oh, no, well, we have to take VJ Edgecombe. Oh, we have to take Trey Johnson.
I think there's a decent amount of stuff here, Doug. I really do. So this is on the heels of her nailing the Tidjane selection last year. I asked her about that process as well. She said, you start hearing some things, you start digging. I felt comfortable enough sending the tweet out, and then we got it right. But Tidjane, there wasn't a lot of noise surrounding him, and then he ended up being the pick. And she feels that same way about Yakubonis, how they just aren't talking about him, and how she even used the word unprecedented in one of the other sound bites. I don't know if that was here, but she used it's unprecedented to be this silent about a prospect. What are some of your thoughts there, and maybe with some of the other fit things she had to say?
Well, I think if they're looking for a locker room fit and a fit next to LaMelo Ball or between LaMelo Ball, not really next to LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, but really just slotting someone right in between those two.
I guess you'd be next to him. I guess so. Yeah.
I guess you would be next to each of them in between.
Yeah, yes. That's right. It makes sense.
Could you cook up someone in a lab better than VJ Edgecombe? I mean, if we're just talking pure fit, I mean, I feel like that's the guy. I'm not, and honestly, I would have more fit questions about Kasparis just because of, I think, the size, the defense, I just think there are a lot of questions. 3-point shooting, and maybe you're okay with someone that isn't going to shoot the ball as well because they are in between LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, who will be doing a lot of the shooting. But I would take the better defensive prospect. To the unprecedented nature of them being silent, there's not a lot of precedent with this organization. We only have one draft with Jeff Peterson. And yes, in that draft, in a weaker draft than what we're dealing with here, with a lot more uncertainty around a lot more players, I think they went silent and they played their cards close to their chest, and they went with the player that no one had mocked to them. So that's example one, but that's the only one we have. It's not as if we're dealing with 10 years of experience with this organization. So I would just say be very careful what we're assuming here by what they're saying or what they're not saying. I would hope that their process goes a little bit more beyond, oh, well, we're just going to take the prospect that no one else is talking about, and that I don't think that's it. I think they're doing their homework. And I think they'll ultimately take the player or make the decision that fits whatever kind of thing that they're trying to establish there, which is, I think, more physicality, more defense, a focus on the defensive end of the floor, and players that are going to come in and be locker room guys. I mean, I just expect them to take a player that fits all three of those things.
So that I would agree with all of that, but also we don't know if VJ is going to be there at 4. True. If he's taken at 3, now you have a real question, because you're right. I think VJ does fit perfectly alongside LaMelo and Brandon with that line of thinking, but maybe Philadelphia loves themselves some VJ Edgecombe as well, as has been reported, maybe loosely, but as has been reported. So if he's gone, and we're hearing these rumblings from your boy, Matt Moore, that the Hornets are, interested in possibly trading back, and then we're hearing maybe that they could be interested in a guy that's not going to be a top 5 pick, but maybe 7, maybe 8, something like that. And do you know for a fact that Knippel is going to be better than Yakubonis? Do you know for a fact that Ace Bailey isn't the fit thing? All right, so we kind of check him off, right? He doesn't necessarily fit right next to LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. Certainly not between them, because Brandon's going to be the 2 in that scenario. Ace would be the 3. So it makes you believe, the stuff about them possibly trading back and if they're going to collect more assets, that's very much on the table. And if that's the play, then maybe it's the Illinois guard that they're looking at first and foremost. Now, again, you're right. You don't want to just focus on this one road while every possibility is still out there. I'm not saying that, but it's a road that we had not talked about at all until basically yesterday. Perhaps it's one that we explore a little more now with there being some noise here.
So let me try to make the case for Yak as a backup plan to VJ Edgecombe, even if you keep LaMelo Ball. But see, that's what makes it tough, because you can't take a guy 4th overall and then just say, all right, we're hoping that he becomes the next, SGA type of player, because that's, he gets low, he snakes through defenses, he's got great vision, so you could see some kind of similarities there. If you think he's a basketball genius and you just can't pass up that upside that he contains, but it's probably not going to flower for another couple of years, that gives you a little bit of time to say, all right, LaMelo, this is still your show. Brandon, this is still your show. Show us what you got in this next season. And then if you don't, LaMelo in particular, if he can't stay healthy, or if we find a suitable trade and we think Casper is developing as we imagine he's going to, then we can make a move on LaMelo. Maybe that I could see that line of thinking. I'll tell you what my fear is.
Yeah.
My fear is that Jeff Peterson, a young general manager, starts to get high on his own supply and feel like he's playing 4-dimensional chess, and he ends up just playing a game of checkers. And he tries to go out on all these limbs, whether it be Tidjane Salaün, and you're going to follow up a draft where you took a big swing on Tidjane Salaün with making another huge risk here. I start to get a little bit concerned. I start to ask questions like, hey, why wouldn't you just take a more sure bet like a Trey Johnson? If you're worried about the limited upside of Knippel, Trey Johnson's right there with lots of upside, I think, on both ends of the floor. And you get a surefire thing with the shooting, which is something you absolutely need. No one on this team can shoot.
Yeah, the Yakubonis thing, I don't think they're taking him at 4, though, right? I think if they stay at 4, they might not take him. But if they really like him and they're zeroing in on a certain guy that they think that they can collect while also bringing on board more assets. I don't think this is necessarily let's take the Illinois guard at 4. I think this is if we are going to trade back, if somebody really wants to move up in the top 4 because Ace Bailey falls and now they're very interested, this is the guy who we're going to take at 7, 8, 9, wherever. I think that's the thing at play, because I'm with you. I don't think they're going to take that person at 4. If they stand pat and they do the Tidjane Salon thing where they didn't want to move out of last year's spot, even if reportedly they were exploring moves to move back in the draft, and then they eventually just did it and took their guy, then sure, maybe it's Trey. But yeah, and I do think, like, Yakubonis got a little something to him, man. I kind of like him. I wouldn't take him over VJ. I wouldn't take him over Trey. I wouldn't take him over Khan. But I do like him. Like, he's a guy, again, that had some shooting numbers that were similar to some of these other really nice shooters coming off of screens. He's like already working on NBA style shots too. He keeps his dribble alive on the baseline, which is fun. I think his vision's awesome, man. And that's what I love. Like, I love a good passer that just tries some really impressive stuff. And even if he has a high turnover rate, that's not great. It's still fun. And I do think that you can start to iron those issues out over the next couple of years. Plus, if we just want size all across the board, he is taller and longer than all the guards we're talking about. Mm-hmm. He's bigger than Trey, VJ, and Khan. And I think he actually is a better ball handler than everybody but Trey. I think Trey and then Yakubonis and then VJ Khan are below those guys. So in putting alongside LaMelo Ball, another like secondary ball handler that could like give you some primary stuff, I'd be into it, but I'd rather trade back and do it if we're going to take that guy. All right, we have one more soundbite, and then we got some Sicko Satchel questions to get to from the people. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Okay, I don't think the Hornets are going to take Khaman Maluach. Doug, he can't handle it. Please don't do that to my guy. Please don't do that to my guy. But there's another team in the top 5 that Krysten Peek says does like themselves some Khaman Maluach. How would that affect the Hornets? We'll talk about it coming up next. LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs, the NBA finals, baby. They start tonight. Every night delivers as well in the NBA playoffs. Highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. And with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up the biggest moments? How could tracking their trends help you with your next bet? Research all of it on FanDuel and then make the smartest bet for you. You can win up to $200 in bonus bets with FanDuel. Again, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, and if you win, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead.
The fact that I have heard crickets about Casper Yakubonis.
Sorry, Krysten tried to jump back into the show. We'll get to you in a second, Krysten. Hold on.
Krysten, we already heard from you there. Please, we're going to go right back to you in just one moment. So let's do it, because she talked about another name that the Hornets could be linked to. It's a scary name for Doug. I don't get the feeling, based off of our YouTube comment section, that anybody else would be all that interested in drafting Khaman Maluach for a variety of reasons. But
can I give you the main reason? Can I just tell you what his comps are?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Can I just tell you what his comps are in the No Ceilings NBA Draft Guide?
Yeah.
It's Mark Williams.
Yeah.
It's DeAndre Ayton. And get this, folks. You're going to love this one. NBA comp, Bismack Biyombo. Can't do it. I can't go down those roads again. I love Biz.
I didn't see Bismack. I did not see the Biz one. That one.
You know my heart. You know, and any sicko you're listening right now, you know my heart. I love Biz. I once saw him do the Euro step in the Memphis Grizzlies arena. I have so much respect for what Bismack Biyombo has done as a basketball player, as a ambassador of the game around the world. I love Bismack Biyombo. but that's a difficult part. He was a difficult part of our draft history and of our franchise history.
Yeah.
And so has Mark Williams has been that too. DeAndre Ayton has been a difficult part of the Phoenix Suns draft history. He's recovered his career a little bit in Portland, but man, I cannot go down that road again. I just can't. Even if, if Malawatch ends up being a great player, I'll say hat tip, I was wrong. I just cannot go down that road again and take that risk.
Sure. I got to tell you, No Ceilings is amazing. I don't love those comps, man. I don't. That's not the type of player I see, but I don't want him either. I'd rather move on and take one of these guards we're talking about. Okay, so Wes asked Krysten Peak about the Hornets possibly taking the Duke big man. She said, yeah, there's a possibility, but she said there was another team that is being linked to Khaman Maluach. Here's that team.
He could be, yes. Khaman is another name that I've been hearing a lot about, particularly tied to the Spurs, because they have a very, very crowded backcourt. So they don't necessarily, like, the rich doesn't need to get richer in the West with Dylan Harper. So Khaman is someone that I've been hearing a lot about, tied to the Spurs, trying to bring him in as a twin tower with Wemby, and someone that they, supposedly really like and target and want to target in the draft. But yeah, he is definitely someone that the analytics teams and NBA teams, they really like. For scouts in particular, they just see him more as like a raw prospect. Obviously, he's got a ton of potential and upside at 7'2" as a rim protector and what he can develop into. But yeah, that would not surprise me at all if they decided to take him at number 4.
Okay.
Wow.
1. Yeah, man. Okay. So,
wowie.
I would not expect the Spurs to take Malawatch at 2.
At
I wouldn't
2?
expect that. Right. So, at what?
What?
No. It's funny. We make fun of it, but internally, that is my reaction. They wouldn't take him at 2. But if the Hornets were interested in possibly moving up to second in the draft and then taking Dylan Harper, it would make a lot of sense for the Spurs, who have a whole bunch of guards up there. Doug, I go back to your guy, Matt Moore, said, look, we're hearing a lot of weird stuff about the Spurs, right? Like they keep telling everyone that we're going to draft Dylan Harper, but then I guess behind closed doors, this is what Krysten Peak described.
I've never believed that for not a nanosecond.
Right.
Not a whatever is less than a nanosecond. I made a Batman call out on the other show, and we got several comments helping me out on some Batman analogies. So if you know what is smaller, if you're a science person, if you know what's smaller than a nanosecond, that's how little I believed in that take.
Is a trillisecond something that exists? I don't know. It sounds like Bun B term of measurement.
A quantum
I'm not sure.
second. We can't even. I don't know. We can't even fathom it.
At the very least, they're going to explore a lot more options than just be so dismissive of anything other than Dylan Harper because of the guards that they have. They just trade for De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle. You get the idea. It would make sense for San Antonio if they are a big believer in Malawatch, and you could absolutely get him at 4 because I don't think Philadelphia would take him, right? I think it would be worth the risk. If you love him, sure, that would suck to miss out on him if you move back 2 spots, but I think it would be worth it for the Spurs. Would it be worth it for the Hornets is the question. That's the question. Because I think it would take a decent amount, man. I think it really would. If the Spurs were so desperate to move out of that second spot, maybe you could just call their bluff and then eventually you have a draft night trade. Maybe that's what happens. But in the meantime, that's still a valuable pick in this draft to get all the way up to number 2. What are your thoughts, man? I know you love yourself some Dylan Harper.
I don't think that it would take a massive, pick haul. I mean, I think you could do it for one additional first round pick because you're only moving down 2 spots. You're essentially guaranteeing San Antonio that they get Malawatch because I think you're right. Philadelphia is not going to make that pick. And so then, but I don't think they're going to be interested in trading up either. There would be several teams under the Hornets that I think would also be interested in trading up, but that's where the big pick haul would have to come because there's no guarantee at that point. If it's 5, 6, 7, I think the Hornets, the Hornets would be good to just really pump up. If I'm going to get mad, it's going to be because the Hornets are pumping up the idea of them taking Khaman so that then they can flip the script and trade up to 2 so that the Spurs can jump down and take Malawatch because I think it would be a good fit and give them an additional asset. what would be really crazy if they went Giannis, trade for Giannis, take their pick haul, because they've got additional picks on top of their own picks. They could probably get Giannis and not even have to sacrifice one of their own picks if they got an additional one from the Hornets. And then you're talking Giannis, Wemby, Malawatch. My God, could you ever score at the rim?
It's the San Antonio limbs. They're just all over the place.
Again,
their defense. Their defense would be, let's all hold hands, play Red Rover at the midcourt line, and if you can get by us, then congratulations, you scored. Here's 50 points. That's it. That's all you're going to score. I thought about that. I think Milwaukee would push hard as hell for a top 4 pick. I don't know if you'd get it done. I know they have other picks. I do. But I think they'd want.
Well, hey, I mean, they could probably sell them on. We have this Hornets unprotected first rounder. I don't know if you've seen the history of the Hornets franchise, but it's a pretty good bet. It's going to be higher up in the draft order. So why don't you take a risk on that? Listen, I'm not going to mince words about this. This is my dream scenario. My hottest draft take that we did a few shows ago was that Dylan Harper will be the prize of this draft, will be the biggest prize of this draft, not Cooper Flagg. I cannot be more of a believer in Dylan Harper's ability to transition into a Cade Cunningham level. And Cade Cunningham's just getting into he's into the All-NBA discussion now, but he's getting into even the MVP discussion. I think Dylan Harper has that same kind of profile. I think he would be a perfect fit next to Brandon Miller, and it allows you to pivot off of what has been, unfortunately, a disappointing tenure for LaMelo Ball with the injury situation. If you wanted to see if it works for a year, I think it can, but then ultimately allows you to pivot where he and Brandon Miller can be the sole focuses of the offense. Yes, it would delay, I think, their ability to, if they moved from LaMelo, it would delay their ability to make the playoffs in the next couple of years. But man, I love Dylan Harper as a prospect.
So 2 things before we move on and then get to Sicko Satchel mock draft stuff. You've said this now, I think 3 episodes in a row, that Dylan Harper, that your hot take is Dylan Harper is going to be the prize of the draft. Would you take Dylan Harper number 1 if you're Dallas?
Well, the difficulty for them is that they have Kyrie Irving, right? So, I think Kyrie Irving is not LaMelo Ball. It's a different situation for them. If it's a coin flip between Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, what? I'm a situational guy. If I was the GM of Dallas, I love Dylan Harper more than Cooper Flagg. I would do it and see if I could, and maybe I think they've got an extension talk with Kyrie Irving and just, dispatch. I don't think that's what they're going to do because Kyrie is Nico's guy. See, what do you want? Do you want my heart or do you want my head? Because my head says Dallas is going to take Cooper Flagg. My heart, if it were me, I'm taking Dylan Harper because I think he's a better prospect.
No, it's okay. That's what I want. Your guy. That's what I wanted to hear. The other thing is,
you seem disappointed with my locked on NBA take. That's why I was just.
What's your locked on NBA take? I actually don't know what your locked on NBA take is. With the Dylan Harper one? My take
is that Dallas would be crazy to not take Cooper Flagg because he fits so seamlessly in what they're trying to do right now, which is win.
Oh, I don't know. I just thought with the Dylan Harper thing, if he's going to be the prize, it's like take him number 1. I was just sussing you out, baby.
That's my dad telling you that's what I would do. My heart. I'm telling you what Nico. Okay. I'm trying to get into Nico's head, which is that's a whole nother bag of beans. It's tough.
My last take on this: if you traded up for Dylan Harper as the Charlotte Hornets and Jeff Peterson, if you did that, isn't that the same thing as taking a risk on one of these veterans and going all in and possibly missing, right? Because this is what Jeff Peterson comes to the podium and talks about. We want to provide sustainability for this team. We want to make sure that we're not skipping any steps and that we're taking it, we're climbing the ladder one rung at a time. Okay, wouldn't trading up for Dylan Harper be the same thing? Like it's a risk. It's a risk whether you trade a couple of guys for an established veteran that might leave in free agency, and then now you're left with the one playoff appearance and then you don't get there anymore. Or you trade up for Dylan Harper and Dylan Harper doesn't hit, but you had to get rid of something valuable. Like you're getting rid of another first round pick at least. So I guess that's my question. Is this also skipping a step for Jeff Peterson? If he views taking a risk for an established veteran that would help you win, but in the short term, is it the same thing as taking a risk and getting rid of assets to go get this guy as well? Why is it different?
It's not skipping a step. It's taking a step. you have to take risk. You have to give up assets eventually.
I'm just talking about in Jeff Peterson's head, though. If we're going in Jeff Peterson's head, right? That's my question. I know what you would do, all right? I know what Doug Branson would do. I'm asking if Jeff Peterson is going to the podium and telling you this.
Well, listen,
what is Jeff? What is Jeff Peterson?
I don't know, but I can't get into Jeff Peterson's head. I hope that Jeff Peterson would view that as taking a step and not skipping a step. Skipping a step is I'm going to sacrifice 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges in the hopes that I can get the Knicks to the Eastern Conference to the finals. And they didn't. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals, and now, Tom Thibodeau is gone. So they skipped a step, and we'll see if it pays off for them in the long run. Can they get a new coach and get back to the finals? But I think moving one additional first-round pick to move up 2 spots to take a guy that I think is an absolute prize, that to me would not be skipping a step. That is taking a step.
Right.
You have to take risk.
Right.
Scared money don't make money.
Right. My point.
Didn't
I think
you
it
say
would
that
be
in the last episode? Aren't I quoting you?
You are now. You are quoting me. My point is that I do think it's a risk all the way, right? I'm with you in taking it. I'm fine taking it. I'm saying I think the messaging would be inconsistent via what he's talked about before, and if he did this. But I'm not saying I'm against it. I'd be fine with it, baby. Like, let's go get Dylan Harper. If you think he's the guy, then let's go get another star. I'm with it.
Yeah, no, I agree that it would be but it's going to be inconsistent. The moment that they decide, all right, now we're starting to move in a direction, then it's going to be inconsistent with everything they've said, because everything they've said is we're being patient, we're being slow, we're taking our time. But eventually you have to hit the gas, or you end up being Mitch Kupchak, Michael Jordan, and that whole debacle, and you continue to not make the playoffs. If you want to get serious as a franchise about making the postseason, eventually you have to take some risk. You have to give up assets instead of collecting assets. And so to me, if you're going to do that, Dylan Harper is, in my mind, a risk that you should be more than willing to take.
Speaking of Mitch Kupchak, we have a listener that still thinks he runs the team. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
If this team doesn't get it together, will Mitch Kupchak be fired? That's coming up next, LOH. Keeper of the Sicko satchel, maybe help the people out with what I was talking about last segment. Mitch Kupchak of it all. We had some interesting comments. We've had some interesting comments the last couple of episodes.
I love it because this draft, I think, is not uncertain in that there are a lot of players with huge question marks and you don't know which way. That was the last draft. The last draft was weaker, and there were a lot of players that had like major question marks about their game. I think all of the uncertainty in this draft is around what's going to happen at 2, at 3, because once all 3 of the teams that jumped up into the top 3 were contender level teams, that's going to create a lot of uncertainty. And so that means I think that the comments have reflected that, in that there are a lot of different players that people are falling in love with and a lot of different scenarios that people are falling in love with. But we got this one comment on the YouTube channel from Carolina Blood 704 that said, "This needs to be Mitch Kupchak's last year if we don't make the playoffs. Not the play-in, the playoffs."
So maybe we give him the benefit of the doubt, and he thinks that Mitch Kupchak is still somehow running things from behind the scenes because he is still technically a part of the franchise. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, that's it. So
I think that's fair because the Hornets, for some reason, they never fire anyone. By the way, I don't know if you heard Steve Clifford on, speaking of never firing anyone, Steve Clifford, who went from being the coach to stepping down to being locked into a dungeon and given international draft tape to pour over. Walker says he's been in that dungeon before. We need a full dungeon report at some point.
Yeah, a bunch of rats running around.
So they never fire anyone. I don't know, though. Steve Clifford, I was listening to him on that Sirius XM interview. He kind of sounded like it may have been just like a 1-year hang. I don't know if Steve Clifford's going to be continuing on. We got to keep an eye on this.
Okay. Yeah.
But he said he went to every practice. He sort of towed that line between like, I'm not a coach. I'm not gonna butt in. This is Charles Lee's team. We're friends. Yeah. He knows, we know the boundaries here. But I'm here as an ear to chew, a shoulder to lean on. So we'll see if that continues.
I just want him to be a part of the organization forever. I really do. I don't ever want him to be fired. I want him to stick around in Charlotte forever. You have another comment, Sicko Satchel question you wanted to get to before we end today?
This one is
And
from
mock draft, of course.
Woohoo TV1, who commented on yesterday's episode with this. No, please don't draft Knipple, which it was a fun, I don't know if this person meant to do this on purpose, but it is a fun mixture of con and Knipple into Knipple. We don't need a fourth pick on a guy like that when there are tons of guys like him in the league. Walker, my reply to that was, I hear you on that, but counterpoint, none of those guys are on this team. They don't have a lot of Knipples on this team. He's right that there are a lot of players that, when you throw the ball to them in the corner, they're just going to knock it down every single time. And they're a threat, really, from anywhere on the floor and have great basketball vision and IQ. Boston's got a ton of them. OKC's got a ton of them. The Pacers have a ton of them. The Hornets don't have very many of those players. So, yeah, I get you being upset about that happening at 4, like the high floor role player. But the Hornets need some more of those.
Yeah. All right, let's go to a mock draft since we are probably over time. It feels like we've been talking a lot today. What mock draft do you have for the people, Doug?
CBS Kyle Boone just updated his mock draft 18 hours ago. And round 1, Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey going 3. Philadelphia says, forget all that noise.
Yeah.
We're just taking Ace Bailey. And that leaves VJ Edgecombe with the 4th pick. And I don't want to speak for you, Walker, but I think you and I are both aligned that if they try to trade up and it doesn't work out, they tried that last year and it didn't work out. If they don't want to risk it, and they don't want to move down, then just take VJ Edgecombe. I don't think anyone's going to have a problem with them taking VJ Edgecombe because he does fit so seamlessly between LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller.
Yeah, I mean, the shooting is a little bit of a concern. I think he's going to be fine shooting. I think it's there enough to where I'm not too worried about it. But VJ Edgecombe seems like the safest play. If he's there, again, if he's not, then does it look like an office fire drill where Michael Scott is just screaming and we don't know exactly what to do? They're going to be prepared for it. Are we, maybe not the Hornets, are we going to be running around like it's an office fire drill where we don't know what to do at number 4? That's going to be the question. Yeah,
look, if they do trade down, I would be a little upset like trading into the back half of this first round. If they trade down a few spots and they can still have their selection of some of these wing prospects, and you can throw Yak into that discussion too. But I think, whether it's Knipple or Johnson or it's Cedric Coward, who I'm super high on, like if they want to take their pick from some of those guys at pick 7 or 8, I'm cool with that. I don't want to trade down to 19. I don't want to like let the Nets get into the lottery. I think there's maybe we can talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. There's some Cam Johnson stuff floating around.
Yep.
I can get into why I would be less comfortable with that, but I just don't like that idea.
Hey, we like Maxime Reynaud. We just don't like him as our only option there at 19. Like we'd rather him fall to us in the second round. Maybe not so much trade back and have that be our first round pick, our top 20 pick. Sorry, Max. Sorry, but we just don't want you there. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. That does include YouTube. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also check them out, Locked On NBA. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday. Wes and Walker from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.